All right, today we're going to crack open a really interesting pitch deck from 2026 for a project called TOI Chain. Now, this isn't just any project. It makes a massive claim that it's finally solved one of the biggest, most persistent problems in all of crypto. So let's dive right in and see what they're all about.
Okay, so right out of the gate, they hit you with this huge claim. They're not just building another blockchain, no. They're building the foundation of digital civilization. I mean, talk about ambition, right? They frame it as this core infrastructure that's literally designed to survive anything you throw at it. Failure, attacks, total chaos. So you know immediately they're positioning this as a solution to something really, really fundamental.
So what exactly is that fundamental problem they're talking about? Well, the deck doesn't waste any time. It pivots straight from that huge vision to the one core bottleneck that, according to them, is holding the entire industry back from real mainstream adoption. And here it is, the heart of the issue, the infamous blockchain trilemma. You've probably heard of this. It's this constant, frustrating trade-off between security, decentralization, and performance. The deck basically says, look, you can have any two you want, but you absolutely cannot have all three at the same time. And it's that compromise, that built-in limitation, that creates this hard ceiling on how big and fast these networks can get. It's the reason they argue that blockchain hasn't truly taken over the world. But here's where the pitch gets really interesting. What's their diagnosis for this trilemma? Get this. They claim the entire problem comes from one single, simple assumption, the idea that hardware is reliable. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. The argument here is that basically every major blockchain out there is built on a totally flawed premise. It's like building a skyscraper on sand. Okay, so if that's the diagnosis, it naturally leads to the next question. What's wrong with how everyone else is trying to fix this? Let's see how the deck breaks down what it calls the fatal flaw in all the current solutions. So here's their takedown of the current landscape. The deck essentially argues that popular scaling solutions, things like sharding and layer 2s, are just band-aids on a bigger wound. They say sharding just breaks up your security into smaller, weaker pieces. Those centralized sequencers you see in a lot of layer 2s, well, that's just creating a single point of failure. And even proof of stake, they argue, can just lead to a few big players controlling everything. And what's the common denominator in all of this? You guessed it. They all still depend on that same core assumption, that the hardware underneath it all is going to work perfectly. All right, so they've spent the first part of the pitch defining the problem and, tearing down the existing solutions. Now, the deck makes a big pivot to its answer, and they're very clear. This isn't just an upgrade or a small improvement. They're talking about a completely different way of building things. And this is the absolute core of their idea. Instead of trying to patch a system built on the assumption of reliability, TOI Chain just flips that assumption completely on its head. It starts from the idea that hardware will fail. It's not an if, it's a when. And by designing for that chaos from the very beginning, from the ground up, they argue you can create a system that's actually anti-fragile, a system that doesn't just survive failure, but can actually thrive on it. Okay, so how on earth do they actually do that? Well, the deck points to two key patented technologies. The first one is called ACAN. The easiest way to think about this is like a super smart, hyper-efficient traffic control system for all of the data flying around. Then you've got SMC squared, which is kind of like the master conductor of an orchestra, but for computing. It takes all the work that needs to be done and intelligently spreads it out across the entire network. The magic, they claim, is how these two work together. They orchestrate everything in parallel, so the system never has to rely on any single perfect piece of hardware. All right, so a new architecture is cool and all, but what's the payoff? What does this actually get you in the real world? Well, according to the deck, the result is a totally new kind of scalability. And this chart really nails their core performance claim. They call it asymptotic scaling. Now, just look at this for a second. With most blockchains, the more people that join, the slower and more clogged up the network gets, right? It hits a ceiling. What this chart claims is that TOI Chain does the exact opposite. The more nodes that join, the faster it gets. I mean, that's a completely radical idea. It's like a highway that gets more lanes, the more cars that get on it. And they're not shy about putting a number on it. The deck projects a mind-boggling 1 million transactions per second. But here's the real kicker. That's not on some crazy, expensive supercomputer. They're claiming this is achievable on regular, off-the-shelf commodity hardware, the kind of stuff you or I could go out and buy. So, of course, they put it all together in a head-to-head comparison against the big players. And you can see it right there in that hardware assumption row. That's the key. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana,
all built on the idea of reliable hardware. TOI Chain, built on unreliability. And according to this chart, that one single change is what unlocks that infinite scalability and gets rid of any single point of failure.
But it's not all just about the core tech. The pitch deck then zooms out to talk about the bigger picture, the ecosystem, the market they're going after. They want to make it clear this is way more than just a new protocol.
And their vision is for a whole integrated ecosystem. So you have the TOI chain as the foundation. Then there's a gateway to make it easy for everyone to access it. On top of that, a decentralized cloud service. And then, down the line, even their own dedicated hardware processor. The idea is to create this integrated value loop where every single piece makes the other stronger, creating this powerful, self-reinforcing cycle. Now, to justify an undertaking this huge, you need a pretty massive target market, right? Well, they've got that covered. The deck points to a future where the crypto market cap hits an absolutely staggering $23 trillion by 2033, and they see this being driven by the great migration from Web 2 to Web 3 and this growing need for what they call sovereign digital infrastructure. And finally, they lay out the roadmap, how they plan to get from here to there. It's broken down into 3 phases over the next 5+ years. Phase 1 is all about the fundamentals, getting the public chain, the gateway, and the wallet out there. Phase 2 gets more advanced, bringing in their TOI cloud and even agentic AI. But it's Phase 3 where it gets really wild. They plan to release their own custom hardware and then ultimately hand over control of the entire system to a DAO for full autonomy.
So there you have it. That's the pitch for TOI Chain. It's a pretty compelling story, right? They identify what they see as a single fundamental flaw in all of blockchain, and then propose a truly radical solution. It's nothing less than a plan to rebuild our digital world on a completely new foundation. And that really leaves us with the big question to chew on. Is this architectural shift, this move from assuming reliability to embracing chaos, is that the breakthrough we've been waiting for to finally solve blockchain's biggest, most stubborn challenges?